Hello, Namaste. This is Timothy Halloran reporting to you from the mountains of northern Georgia, where I have escaped to for a few days for a little retreat to try to relax and recuperate and see some winter, and the key word is try. Easier said than done in times like these. And so in today's video I may not have a whole lot of lofty spiritual advice, but I'm going to try my best to explain the dynamics that are going on in terms of our world and our collective energy at this time. And so this weekend of the 7th and the 8th, it's an intense weekend. We just had the Sun conjoin Pluto on Saturday, and then yesterday on Sunday, Mercury turned direct, and now in a couple days we're going to have the Sun square Uranus on Tuesday the 10th, and then square Jupiter on Wednesday the 11th. So the Sun is going through this pinch, this T-square tense energy between Pluto square to Uranus opposite to Jupiter. And so there's a lot of fundamental transformation that can be going on right now. There is intensity that is provoking evolutionary change that can have to do with dealing with powers, dealing with authorities, outer influences. And we're dealing with Capricorn season. The Sun is in the sign of Capricorn. Mercury was moving retrograde through Capricorn until January 4th, when Mercury moved back into Sagittarius, and then yesterday stationed at 28 degrees Sagittarius, 2 degrees away from the galactic central sun. And so all of this Capricorn energy does have a lot to do with the real world, with time, form, limitations, authorities, and outer influences that can very much be outside of our control. Capricorn is the world, is the culture, religious institutions, and family cultural programming that in many respects we are born into. And so we do not have complete free reign or choice over these things, such as paying our taxes and paying the bills and going to work in order to make enough money to pay for food in order to survive. This is the Capricorn physical security principle. And so Mercury, having begun this retrograde with Pluto towards the end of December, and now having moved back into Sagittarius and stationing on the galactic center, is this unwinding and this letting go, and in many cases Mercury retrograde can be a dissolving. And all of this dissolving and letting go with Mercury retrograde, it is fundamentally in the service of us to readjust, reprogram our own routines, rituals, our own mental conceptions, and a lot of this can have to do with our own orientation to our work, to our world, beginning in Capricorn. It can have to do with our cultural programming, our orientation to authorities. And with Mercury and with Gemini, there is this sort of rat maze, left brain, rational, black and white. There's only two ways to go. You can either go left or right when you're moving through the maze. There's this sort of black and white choices and this rigidity that can be experienced with Mercury. And so when Mercury turns retrograde, this can make all of this stuff, doors can close that were seemingly open in front of us, other doors are opening, things fall apart, and it can be tough in the rat maze because there can be this sense of anxiety and, well, what do I do? There's scrambling, having to reformulate, etc. And so to illustrate this in my own example, I had my calendar stopped working. Technology issues always gets associated with Mercury retrograde because it forces us to readjust in terms of how we're using technology and our work, etc. So my calendar's not updating. I missed a bunch of appointments. I thought I had free time that I didn't. Had to reschedule and refund a bunch of readings, and then my computer broke immediately before I came out here. And so enjoying this time has been tough because there's all of these emails and rescheduling and reprogramming. I've got to go home and buy a new computer, and then I've got to do all of this stuff. And this creates this anxiety and this situation of this rat maze I can't really maneuver around. And so Mercury, having just stationed in Sagittarius yesterday, it's like this surrendering, this letting go, and it's opening up things into expanses in terms of how we can readjust and come back into Capricorn. And Mercury will move back into Capricorn on Thursday the 12th. And Thursday the 12th is our big day this week where we have our full moon in Cancer. And so before Mercury moves back into Capricorn, it's time for us to try and slow down and breathe and see how we can see this from a more holistic, big picture point of view. And you know what? It's easy to say. And that's why I began this video by saying, I'm not going to be giving a whole bunch of lofty spiritual advice in this week's video, because it's easy to say. It's another thing to do. And when we're dealing with the dynamics that we are with this full moon, which is activating a grand kite formation, reactivating this T-square with the Sun, Pluto, square to Jupiter and Uranus. There are so many different directions that we're getting pulled simultaneously that it's almost impossible to have all our bases covered at this time. I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is a time where we are going to be experiencing that all of our bases are not covered. This is a time where we can be experiencing insecurity and anxiety as a result of all of these dishes needing to be balanced and spun, and it's just easy to say and it's another thing to do. This is like riding a scooter down a mountaintop type of energy. And so with Mercury retrograde, the advice is, just readjust and, be open to change and be flexible, because that's the very best that we can do. And yet, does that necessarily mean that everything's going to work out perfectly and become served to us on a silver platter? Easy does it, without us being challenged by our own conditioning, our own past, the outer expectations and obligations coming from our bosses and outer authorities and the demands of the family, the demands of the job in the real world. It's easier said than done. And so let's talk about these dynamics. Beginning with Jupiter opposite to Uranus. This is a dynamic that's going on the majority of 2017, but it's really strong right now. This opposition is very exact. And it's bringing up this very revolutionary type of energy where we have the opportunity to restructure our own perspective in terms of how we're seeing ourselves, in terms of what our life means to us, how we are relating to other people, how we are relating to society. This is a very feminist revival type of energy. It's encouraging us to transform our own orientation towards our own individuality in terms of cultural, gender, social roles and prescriptions, etc. And there is, in general, a lot of illumination and a lot of revolutionary eureka type of moments and opportunities can happen here in order to reorient us to a sense of purpose that is more meaningful and more ideal to us, particularly this month of January, because ruling these two planets, Jupiter in Libra and Uranus in Aries, is the planets Venus, the ruler of Libra, Mars, the ruler of Aries. And both Venus and Mars are currently in Pisces, the most idealist, spiritual type of go with the flow, have faith, be full of unconditional love, be serving and loving to others. This is the sign of Pisces. And so in many respects, this is an opportunity for us to reorient ourselves to these more grandiose, big picture goals that connect us to our deeper heart. And yet, is it easy to say go with the flow? Yes, it is. Is it another thing to go with the flow, particularly this week with this full moon? Yeah, it's challenging. It's very challenging. And that's because square to this Uranus-Jupiter opposition is going to be the Sun-Pluto opposite to this full moon in Cancer, 22 degrees on January 12th. It'll be about 6:40 a.m. on the East Coast. I think this is around 4 a.m. on the West Coast of the United States. This is a very powerful full moon, and it is intense. This is not the funnest full moon of the year. This Cancer-Capricorn polarity is what is challenging. The Jupiter-Uranus revolutionary, inventive, let's reinvent our individuality to be more united with our deeper sense of purpose, is being challenged by the security polarity between Cancer and Capricorn, which is the polarity between work and home, outer duty and obligation versus inner security, the feeling of peace and well-being and comfort inside of ourselves versus the expectation, obligation, duty, should be doing this, this is the right way to be doing things, etc., coming from the outside, tradition, cultural programming, our own childhood, the way we were raised by our parents, etc. We are seeing the dynamics which make it difficult for us to achieve real, tangible, authentic security simultaneously inside and outside. This is a time where we can be going very much on the teeter-totter. I have so much work to do, and now I feel like I'm not contributing enough to my friends and my family. And I told this person I was going to spend time with them, and now all my work obligations and duties are stripping me of my time and my energy. Or I'm having to put so much out there into the world that I feel like I can't take care of myself, and I'm forgetting to eat food, and I'm forgetting to clothe myself and bathe and feel good in my body, which is exhausting me, which is draining me. Or we're going inside and there's all of these emotions and all this emotional processing that needs to be done, and it can just feel like an ocean of feelings. And there's so much that needs to be done on the outside, and we feel drained and we feel exhausted. These are very real dynamics and circumstances we can be experiencing with this full moon. This full moon is not only opposite to the Sun and Pluto, square to Uranus, square to Jupiter, it's also inconjunct to Saturn. It's also trine to Chiron. This is a very powerful full moon. The inconjunct to Saturn is just replaying this tension between the Cancer-Capricorn polarity, where it's just easy to maybe imagine or say, or maybe I'll do this and have everything work out. And this is just a period where we have to almost anticipate frustration and not everything working out, and everything being unraveled in terms of all the extra loose ends that still have to be tied, so on and so forth. And very interestingly, on the same day as this full moon, Thursday, January 12th, Venus is conjoined Neptune in Pisces, which is this invitation to step into unconditional love. And it's this very idealistic, very compassionate, caring orientation towards others. Being the perfect father, the perfect mother, husband and wife. Being the perfect friend, the servant to others, the spiritual aspirant, is Venus and Neptune in Pisces. It's this very deep yearning for reconnection with God and spirit, and this is pulling us, this is inviting us. I want to achieve what the full moon in Cancer is about, which is this type of surrendering and merging into the ocean. Cancer is the mother. Cancer is ruled by the moon. The full moon in Cancer, which happens once a year around this time in January, is arguably one of the most powerful full moons of the year. And this one we're saying is going to be one of the most powerful full moons of this year, of 2017. This is a powerful full moon. It can evoke very big emotions. And that can be the ocean that we're also feeling, is the ocean of feelings. The ocean of unresolved dynamics and issues stemming from our world, our society, our past, our conditioning, etc. It's like we said in our last video, one of the main transits throughout 2017 is Saturn square to Chiron. What Saturn square to Chiron is an initiation. An initiation is not always fun and games. It's not always about a ritual dinner and having an award pinned to us. An initiation can sometimes be like lifting weights, which is what Saturn, Capricorn, winter time is very much about. Do we have enough food to survive the winter? Is the harvest plentiful enough to survive? Are we strong enough? Is our immune system strong enough, etc.? And so this initiation is about taking the inflictions, the sense of abandonment, and the hindrances that we uniquely experience in our past, coming from our unique upbringing, childhood, worldly situations. This world has oppressed every single soul that inhabits it in some way, shape, or form. To believe anything otherwise is simply to be unaware of the world in which we live. We do not live in a perfect world. Nobody has it perfectly made. Nobody has all the answers and everything figured out. And those who think they do are usually just playing some type of idealistic inner conning to try and make their life easier by avoiding the difficult parts of life. And this is a time where we, in many respects, need to have a lot of spaciousness and flexibility and forgiveness for ourselves. Mercury is still in its shadow phase. I would give yourself the next week or 2 weeks of flexibility and spaciousness and just forgiving and forgetting and rectifying and adjusting and, just doing the best that we can. And not necessarily thinking, oh, well, there's that spiritual one-liner that, oh, if I put enough money out, then money should come back in. And if I am flexible, then, Mercury retrograde shouldn't affect me, and my car shouldn't break down, and my computer shouldn't break. And, oh, well, if any of these things are happening, it's because I'm not following procedure or doing something that's wrong. And then we blame it on ourselves. And instead, we need to do the opposite with this full moon in Cancer. This full moon in Cancer is about self-nurturing, self-forgiveness, coming into your own inner warmth that is the maternal nature of the mother, which is the most needed and the most forgotten medicine of this day and age, is the medicine of the mother. And this mother Cancer energy says what? I don't care whether you messed up, whether you lost a bunch of money, whether you just got fired, whether your wife and your children are disappointed in you because you couldn't make the family dinner. I don't care whether you're throwing a temper tantrum, or you're going crazy, or you're feeling sad and depressed and you're crying, or you're laughing and you're feeling unemotional compared to everybody else. I don't care, whatever it is that you're feeling or experiencing, I embrace you as my child, is the maternal wisdom of the mother, which is what we have not been trained how to do, give to ourselves or give to others in the world. Which is not what we were taught in schools. It's not what we are taught in our jobs. It's not what we are taught by religion or culture or tradition at all. Any mainstream religion, any popular culture on this planet in the last several thousands of years has lacked this maternal wisdom, which allows us to surrender to the ocean of feelings and go with the flow. And that is why it's easy to say and another thing to do. Because we don't live on another dimension. We live on this one. We have survived thousands and thousands of years of man-made patriarchal distortions, which infected culture, religion, and tradition. You cannot pick up a book and it's going to have all the answers for you. Because that is a type of forced programming. This is the right way to do things. Jesus said this. Buddha said this. Krishna said this. These are the days you do your rituals. These are the days you go to church. This is when your taxes are due. This is the hours you go to work. This is forceful, rigid programming that results from a distortion of masculinity that says we need to control and manage and mechanize everything to the best of our capability, because if we leave it to its own devices, everything will fall to shit. Nature will devour us. And the maternal wisdom, the forgotten wisdom, the matriarchal wisdom is that nature is our friend. And nature functions through a natural unfolding cycle, like flowers blossoming in springtime, like fall leaves falling in fall time. There is a fluid movement that is not forced. It just flows. Water goes, I forget the phrase, water goes where there is the least amount of, it fills up the glass, it fills up the pool, it goes with the least amount of resistance is where water flows. That's the wisdom of Pisces and Cancer. There's a natural trine between Pisces and Cancer. The wisdom that Jesus actually taught was the wisdom of Pisces and Cancer, of the water trine, of nature, of spirit. Our spiritual nature is not forceful. It flows throughout time. Our potential unfolds throughout time. It's not something that we go in with a jackhammer and what we go in with a jackhammer and are drilling up these days is the programming that results from over forcefulness. That is what we have to do work paradoxically to change. There's the part of ourself that believes that everything is work. And trust me, nobody believes this and has this more deeply conditioned than me. I feel like I'm this person who's this deeply masochistic, forceful, rigid, gotta do the best, gotta make it perfect for everybody else or else I'm the world's greatest failure, trying to help other people not to fall into the same trap that I already have, which has resulted from a overly forceful prescription coming from culture, education, religion that says this is the way you have to do it in order for life to work. This is how you be a spiritual person. This is what a spiritual person looks like. You meditate this many hours. You always have a smile on your face. You always give your time, your energy, your resources to other people without even thinking about it. And you put your own comfort and your own self-care last, is what we have been programmed to believe spirituality is, which is self-sacrifice. It leads to the car running out of gas and us being stranded in the middle of a desert, is what the spirituality and what our culture tells us is what we're supposed to do to be a good person. And so when Mercury goes back into Capricorn on January 12th, the same day as this full moon, we are going back into the rat maze. We're going back into the world. Hopefully this last weekend we had a little bit of reflection, realizations can be made, transformation is going on in terms of our role, our orientation, like I'm going to have to go buy a new computer and redo stuff. It's going to be different than it was before. But it's going back into the rat maze. It's going back into the schedule, the ritual, the routine, the world, the duties, the obligations, other people's, etc. And when we go back into that, we need to be as flexible and forgiving as humanly possible. And remember that comforting ourselves is a huge part of what makes it possible to do work in the world. This is a huge area. The Cancer-Capricorn polarity is what lacks the most balance out of all polarities in the zodiac. And this is because we have the south node of Pluto and Jupiter and Saturn in Capricorn, which says thousands and thousands of years of forceful winter time is where we've been as a humanity. That says it's all about survival, it's all about survival of the fittest, etc. And once you survive, make sure you give away everything to everybody else if you're going to be a good person, right? If you want to be a spiritual person, you join the monastics, you take a vow of poverty, you are celibate. All of these things are cutting us off from our senses and our own inner comfort, which is basically like trying to have all of these cogs and gears and wheels spinning without there being any grease or lubrication allowing them to move. And so they get rusty and they get rigid and they get frozen, and then the machine explodes and falls apart. And that's trauma is what results from that. Deception. Thinking that this is the best way to make things work, and it's the opposite that's true. It can be very disappointing. It can lead us to feeling like, oh my gosh, I've been duped by spirituality, by culture, by my parents who said this is the way to survive in the world and this is the way to take care of yourself. We have not been taught how to take care of ourselves as a human species. Just look at this country, the United States, the country that we're always looking at because it's supposed to be the authority of the world. Even though it's pretending not to be, it obviously is. It's dropped thousands of bombs in the last year and it's not being involved in any wars. But look at the health standards in this country. Look at the health care. We don't have health care here. The health standard is McDonald's. We don't know how to take care of ourselves fundamentally. We wake up in the morning and we go into Starbucks to drink more coffee to make us more productive, which is, again, no lubrication for the gears and the wheels. It is just more, do more. And what are the authorities and the so-called helpers doing? They say, oh yeah, do it even more. You want to be successful in life? This is how you do it. You bust your ass. You produce more. You put out more. That's how you survive in the world. And it is not how you survive in the world. It requires a balance and a harmony. If you're not taking enough time to relax, if you're not eating enough good food, if you're not taking enough warm baths, and just taking time to be in your body and your senses and allowing yourself to emotional process, you are shooting yourself in the foot. And our world teaches us to do that and then gives you a plastic gold star as a result of self-sacrificing and shooting yourself in the foot. Good job. You get this plastic good star that's called nobility. And now other people will look up to you and feel bad about themselves that they're not as strong and as cut off from their own emotions as you are. And so this full moon brings up this tension where the very emotional, soft people can feel overwhelmed by their emotions, and then it seems very difficult to do the work in the world. And on the flip side, people can be so disconnected from their emotions and so frigidly imprisoned in the real world that they wonder why things aren't really working out and there's no sense of security, and I'm making more and more money, but why am I not feeling happy and satisfied? What is the worth of all of this work? What is the worth of all of this money? And this is a time where money can not really be raining on us, you know, with this Cancer-Capricorn, Venus with Neptune and Pisces. Yeah, this might be a time of, oh my goodness, I realize that I didn't spend my money in the best way, or there's more money that needs to be paid than I realized before, or, you know, it's just, I don't really have it concretely established, and it's you know, it's like all wishy-washy and confusing. What's going on with all of this stuff? And so my best advice for this time around, these next couple weeks, is just really try to hang in there. The sun going square to Uranus tomorrow and then square to Jupiter on Wednesday is this very exciting, very restless type of energy that's really just pushing and molding and shaping us. And it's like our own ego identities are just having to transform. Who am I? What is my orientation to the world? It's having to be sort of melted down and reconstructed a little bit. It's being remolded. It's being reshaped. In the meantime, Mercury just turned direct. We're just starting to recalibrate our own mental conception to our own work, our own tradition, our own past. This Mercury in Capricorn has been a lot of reflection on the past, our own cultural, traditional programming. We are having to seriously look at these things, and it can be exhausting. We have Mars coming into a conjoinment with Chiron next Monday, January 16th. In Pisces, this is another one that can feel like, you know what, I'm doing so much, I am taking care of more people than I ever have, I'm putting more out than I ever have, I'm trying to be the best, most loving person I can be, and I'm drained. I feel I'm on empty. I feel like I don't have the willpower and the reorientation. And what this is, again, taking us all back to, the only thing I can say is it's bringing us to these fundamental root issues, which is essentially making us aware of the journey, the process that we're going to be going through in not just a short amount of time. It does take time. This is like riding a scooter down a mountain. And, you know, it's just, you've got to be a pro, you know, you've got to be an extreme sports professional who wants to ride down a mountain right now. You've got to be just like, you know what, at least we're doing this together. Rather than doing the whole compare and contrast and look how easy it is for them and how difficult it is for me. No, we're all going to be experiencing some things in one way, in some shape or form. Inside, outside. It's different for every person. We're all unique individuals. We experience the collective transits, the sun, the moon, differently. But we're all dealing with these same fundamental dynamics. We're becoming aware of the long-term work, which is, again, paradoxically, the work of undoing the quote-unquote work that we've been prescribed. So the spiritual work, the work in the world, your career, it has to be reconstructed in such a way to not be so worky. It can't just be physical exhaustion, coffee all day long, putting more out, mechanistic gears with no lubrication. How are we going to bring lubrication into our life? How are we going to come back to the ocean of Cancer and Pisces? The goddess Metis was the full moon goddess of the ancient Greek religion before she was completely forgotten. She is the wife of Zeus, almost completely unmentioned. She is Cancer, the mother, the full moon. She is the primal sea goddess. She is the ocean. And that ocean is warm. And when you're in that ocean, there isn't a whole lot of temperature fluctuation. You don't have to. We didn't have to, make enough crop to survive the winter when we were all sea creatures. Just living constantly in that lubrication. It is only go with the flow. It's only ebbing and flowing in the cycle of life. And big fishes eating bigger, eating little fishes, etc. And at some point we crawled on the land and we developed our own free will and our own independence, and life somewhat became more complicated as a result of this, and it became more and more and more and more complicated, and we got further and further and further away from the ocean of love, which connects us to everything, every other living creature, every mammal, every fish, everything came out of this ocean. And that ocean is the mother. She is the one that says, I don't care whether you're a jaguar or a fish or a human being having a bad day, etc. You are my child. I embrace you. And there is this letting go and just, okay, this isn't working, so we'll flow to the next thing. And this isn't working, we'll flow to the next thing. And it's not the end of the world. Easier said than done. Forgive your inner child. Forgive your ego when it flips out and throws temper tantrum and whines and complains, because you have very, very good reason to feel those things. I think that is a symptom of spiritual advancement rather than the spiritual one-liner. Oh, you're having a bad day? Here's the answer. Here's the prescription. Jesus said this. Buddha said this. The spiritual guru said this, etc. Here's what you need to do to feel better. Instead, what we need is more Cancer, which is I care about you. You're having a bad day or throwing a temper tantrum. I have no advice for you. I can't solve your problems. Is honesty. But I care about you. I love you. I feel where you are, and that's difficult. Is having compassion for our own inner child, going through a difficult time of having to rectify this long forgotten world. That we did come here as beautiful spiritual souls and warriors at heart to bring this world and this winter back into the ocean, to remember the mother, to remember the divine feminine, which is the compassionate ebb and flow, forgiving, surrendering nature, the water trine, the spiritual nature. We came here to confront the rigidity and the forcefulness which made us forget about the ocean, so that way we can do the work of deconditioning the work, the labor that made us forget about what is behind and before all of these things, before we thought that life was laborious. When we lived on farms and we didn't have 9-to-5 jobs, raising our cattle and our crop wasn't work, it was life. There was no separation. There was no difference between the family and the work. We lived on the farm, we raised the food, we loved and we cared for one another. This world was originally meant to be paradise. Simply take care of the plants and the animals and you live in the Garden of Eden. That is the ocean. That is the maternal wisdom, the earth, the abundance. Nature is still here. We have just overly complicated and come so far from it. So keep this in mind as we surrender to and maneuver through the rat mazes and come on the other side of these complications. And in the meantime, be very forgiving. Allow yourself to feel what you need to. Throw temper tantrums. It's okay. It's okay. That inner child has a good reason to throw a temper tantrum. It feels duped, it feels deceived, it feels let down, and those feelings need to be processed. Those feelings need to be brought to the surface, and they will inevitably be transmutated into the passion and the love which drives us to be the beautiful and loving people that we are in a way that is not self-sacrificing and shooting ourselves in the foot, so we can keep all our gears lubricated, and we can keep moving forward as the powerful locomotives that we are, and at the same time have it not be so exhausting, mechanical, and just like a rat maze. It is powerful. We are stars. We radiate the truth, the love, and the light outward from inside of ourselves. So in that endeavor, I am absolutely wishing you all the best, and I will be talking to you sometime again in mid-January. Speaking of the ocean and coming back to that warm place, I will be in Costa Rica in May of 2017 for Astrology Rising. It's going to be an amazing, life-changing event where we're coming back into our soul family and remembering what is most important. It is also such a joy for me to share that emotional safe space in my individual readings with my clients, where we do our astrological work in a place where we can make ourselves feel emotionally safe. And we can feel good in the nature that we are, irrelevant of the little bits and pieces, the pass, the fail, etc. There is no such thing as that in nature, in astrology, or in real life. And so it is such an honor to be able to celebrate real life with all of you. And I wish you all the best as we maneuver through this real life. Namaste.